Hi everybody and very welcome to yet another Mentor live stream. I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic wherever you are out there in the world. Today on the live stream, guys, we are going to be covering a few things. We're going to start by answering the very first super chat question, which comes from Deanne about why bounce landings happens. But then throughout the live stream, I will be answering some other questions that I have already received when I was reading through the chat here before the live stream. So we're going to be talking about, can you become a pilot after 30? Why is there no video in the black box? And why is the black box really a black box? Why isn't it just live video feed to some server somewhere? We're also going to talk a little bit about what you can and cannot do as age increases. So can you become a flight attendant, for example, when you're 61? And also motion sickness. So the way I'm going to do this, guys, is a little bit different than normal. As always, I will be answering all of your super chat questions. So if you're using that little dollar sign below, that means that you're sending some money to support the channel, and you're also sending a question with that money. And I am guaranteeing that I will be answering all of the super chat questions that's coming up. So use that. And on top of that, as always, I hope you guys have downloaded the Mentor Aviation app. If you haven't, do so. There's a link here in the description of the video. I really want as many people as possible to get in there. And you can send me questions directly there. Just tag @Mentor, and that's going to send me a direct push, which I can then read questions from. So that's how I'm going to do it. And of course, if time permits, I will also going to be answering questions from the regular chat that I see is already going crazy. All right, guys. So let's start off then. Anna is asking, what causes bounce landing? On my last flights on the Boeing 757, we bounced at least once on landing. Also, what happens if you don't rotate on takeoff? Well, I have actually done a video on the subject of hard landings, and basically for a bounce landing to occur you need to have done a fairly rough landing. So it can happen in, for example, very windy conditions, where the pilots are completely focused on trying to get the aircraft down inside of the touchdown zone so that we can start braking. If we come in and we're focusing on on the landing bit, and all of a sudden there's a negative gust, as in the wind might have been blowing constantly and then stops blowing, well then the airspeed drops from the aircraft, and when the airspeed drops, the aircraft just falls, right? Especially close to the ground, so it might fall down and hit the ground very hard. And of course we have we have shock absorbers that will take care of some of that energy, but it might be so much energy that we actually bounce back up again. All right. Now, if that happens, there are a couple of things we have to think about. If it's what's called a high bounce, as in you bounce so high that you don't think that we will get down properly within the touchdown zone, and we might not have enough runway still to land the aircraft safely, well, in that case, we go around. Right? In that case, we just press toga, go around, flap 15, set go around thrust, and we initiate a very low go around. And in that case, we have to be aware that the speed might be a bit too low. So we have to be very careful when we rotate the aircraft so we can avoid any risk of a tail strike. There's also a slight risk when you're doing that. If you get a bounce and you close the thrust levels, there is a function on the 737 that allows the spoilers to come up fully, even if the aircraft is not on the ground. And that obviously, if you're then intended to do to land again, you're going to get a steep increase in your angle of attack, which might actually make you hit the tail, and it can cause some really severe damage to the aircraft. So a high bounce is going to lead to a go around. Now a low bounce, which is what you experienced on the 757, is perfectly controllable. We might have to add a little bit of thrust in order to stabilize the aircraft again, and then just continue to land, start braking. It happens from time to time, not that often, as fortunately, but it does happen. Now, to your second question, what would happen if you wouldn't rotate on takeoff? Well, if you would stay on the ground, as we go above our rotation speed, at some point the tires will reach their limit speed. Okay, the tires are only built to rotate to a certain speed, and if you go above that speed, you might actually burst your tires. They might explode from the combination of heat that builds up and the centrifugal force that comes with it. So it's not a good idea, and of course at some point or another you'll run out of our runway. I mean, our rotation speed, our V1 and rotation speed are calculated in order for us to be able to, with two engines, take off safely and reach a specific height above the threshold at the end of the runway. So it's supposed to do that, or supposed to let us take off and also reach another type of screen height with one engine. If we've lost one engine, we're still supposed to be able to take off, or we're supposed to be able to reject the takeoff and still stop within the remaining part of the runway. So these are some of the criteria that we use to calculate what our V1 and rotate speed are. So there would be, the only reason you wouldn't rotate at the VR would be if there's a gust of wind, so the speed suddenly decreases below the rotation rate again, and in that case we might delay it until it accelerates up again, providing we have enough runway to do so. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, I'm going to be answering all of the other questions that I mentioned in the beginning as we go along. Right now we have a super chat question that I'm going to go through. So French Fruits is asking, when decelerating with the auto brake, at what point do you start manually braking? Does the auto brake automatically disconnect at a certain speed? Great question. This is obviously it's depending on aircraft type. I can't speak for example, the Airbus 320, but I can speak for the 737. And the 737 has different auto brake settings. For those of you who are not aware what that is that we basically put a switch telling the aircraft at what rate it needs to decelerate. Okay, so if you have short runways, we increase to maybe auto brake 3, and then 2 and 1, depending on how long the runway is and how bad or how strong of braking we are going to need. But if we set, for example, auto brake 3, and we don't do anything, the aircraft will land and it will brake until it stands still. All right, it will not disengage. There's a few ways that you can disengage the auto brake. It's advancing the thrust levels. It's because then obviously the aircraft will assume that you're taking off again. It is gently braking using the toe brakes, which is what we normally do, which is just kind of increasing the pressure until it passes the point where the auto brake is using the pressure, you know. So we use more than the auto brake is using. The auto brake will then say, all right, fix it, all up to you, and it will disengage. That's why you will feel when you're flying on 737 as the aircraft is decelerating that you might get kind of a sudden braking, and then it continues to decelerate, but it's smoothly, and that is that little point where we go into manual braking. If you're really skilled, you can do it without anyone feeling that, but most people kind of add a little bit of brake just to get clear out of the auto brake. And the third way is just lowering the speed brake. When we lower the speed brake, that will automatically disengage the auto brake as well. So what we do normally is we do disengage it manually when we see that we can, that we have the deceleration under control at around between 60 and 80 knots, somewhere around there. It's about the same speed approximately as when you start to reduce the reverse thrust from second detent reverse thrust or full reverse thrust to idle reverse thrust. Now, the reverses, however, they will stay engaged until we reach taxi speed. So we will have the reverse thrust open. We don't close them because that will close the whole reversing system until we're back to taxi speed. And when we're at taxi speed, well, in that point, then we will close the reverse thrust. So I hope you're happy with that. Right. So Blizzard, great nickname. Hello Mentor, if you're traveling as a passenger and you hear about pilot incapacitation, for instance a captain, are you going to identify yourself as a pilot regardless of the type of plane? Yes, because the only way that I would hear about pilot incapacitation of the captain would probably be because they're asking the crew of, in some ways, is looking for help. Okay, maybe from positioning pilots, that might be positioning company pilots normally. Now, I wouldn't. The thing is that if the first officer is still working, if still is not incapacitated, it is unlikely that I will be of much help on an aircraft that I'm not typed on, except for maybe taking radio and just use as someone to bounce ideas off, as in, for decision making, then I would probably be useful. But for actually flying the aircraft, the first officer is much better doing that. I would not go in and in any way resume control, but I could be sitting on jump seat or even in the empty seat just to be someone to talk to. But that would be under very, very, very extreme circumstances, and I think that would very rarely be the case that that would actually happen. But it's a great question though. Now I had a question very recently whether or not there was a guy on my Facebook page, which I'm hoping that you guys are following, that asked if I would be able to land for example, an Airbus 380 if I had no prior training and they just would put me in there. You're the only chance this aircraft has. Land it. It's a great question. It's very hard to say yes or no to that, because if it was just an aircraft, right? If it was an aircraft and there was a stick and a rudder and a thrust lever, and I would be able to land it, no question about it. I would be able to steer it in. I would be able to use whatever knowledge I have about approximations of speeds and things like that, and I would be able to get it down on a nice long runway and get it to stop. No question. But the problem here is that the Airbus is a completely different philosophy to Boeing when it comes to use of FMC, when it comes to their autopilot modes, all of those things, how to fill in speeds into the FMC, all of that would be something that I wouldn't really know how to do. So even disconnecting the autopilot and hand flying it using the side stick would be something that would be completely new to me. So I would say that if I got to guess, it would be easier for an Airbus pilot to jump in and do it on a Boeing than it would be from a Boeing pilot to go into an Airbus, just because of the complexity of the systems as such. And the reason I'm saying that is because all pilots, no matter if you fly Boeing or Airbus, will have at some point flown stick and rudder Cessnas or Tecnams or whatever it might be that you've done your training on. Boeing is much more similar to the training aircraft because it has that big stick, it has a big disconnect switch, and it has movable thrust levels that you can actually see exactly what the engines are doing. So it's simpler, it's more old-fashioned, and in that, because of that, I think that most people would probably be able to kind of figure the Boeing out, so to say, while I'm less sure that you will be able to do that on an Airbus. At least that's my guess anyway. I would love to try it though. It would be fun just to be put into a simulator and say, hey, there you go, fix it. Cool. So, No Apprentice, do you play the game Infinite Flight? No, I don't play any kind of flight simulators at the moment, not at all. All right. Actually, I don't play much computer games at all, but I will do, and I'm going to make a little shout out here for my son Lucas, who's just started a YouTube channel because he loves playing Minecraft. And I'm gonna link to his YouTube channel here. He made the cutest video yesterday where I'm actually guest starring a little bit. Is Luca de Cruz. Luca de Cruz is the name of the YouTube channel. Check it out. And I will be letting him teach me to do some computer gaming going forward, because it's just fun to see an 8-year-old trying to teach an old fart like me to do computer gaming. And we might go into flight simulators there as well, even though I think I have probably a hand up on him when it comes to that. He definitely will kick my royal butt in a Fortnite or in on Minecraft battle. Right, cool. So I'm gonna go and answer one of those questions that came up. So, can you be a pilot after 30? Of course you can. Of course you can. You can be a pilot at pretty much any age, okay? Even a commercial pilot, you can start at any age. There might be some individual airlines out there that has age limits. Now, that is easily checked by just going in to see what the recruitment page is looking like and see if that is a limitation or not. But I would say in most cases there's no such limitations. What is limiting is your own personal life, your circumstances. The problem is that as you get older, you tend to have teamed up with a husband or wife. You will have gotten a few kids, you would have gotten a mortgage on a house, the kids are in school, things like that, and you will become less flexible. All right, so in the beginning, when those of you out there who wants to become pilots, those of you who are in flight training right now and who are young, you know that you will be happily, moving continents, moving into some little shack somewhere in order to just fly. And that's perfect. That's what I did as well. And that's what you do in any job. If you work for a bank or whatever, you're going to be running errands on a minimum salary for a few years before you work your way up. The problem is if you have a job and you're 35 years old and you have a mortgage, you have kids and stuff like that, to go out and to move away from home and to maybe go down in salary might not always be possible. And that's why you see less and less people as they get older going into this. on top of that, obviously, you have the investment, the cost of becoming a pilot, which is unfortunately still very, very high. So yeah, you can become a pilot after 30. Some flight schools and some airlines will or might have age restrictions, but I don't think there are many of them. But just do your research. If you can go through the preparation and do the suitability tests, which any good flight school worth their salt is going to offer you, and you can clear that, then just go for it. Life is too short. That's what I wanted to say. So Coleman Lee, what is LNAV, VNAV, and RNAV? Do a video on it. Thank you. Well, LNAV stands for lateral navigation. VNAV stands for vertical navigation, and it's basically the two systems that make up the higher level of automation inside of modern airliners. So if when we're flying fully automated flight on LNAV VNAV, it means that the aircraft is both following the pre-programmed route that we have put in before the flight in LNAV, lateral navigation, and it's also following the altitude restrictions during a standard instrument departure, for example, and during climb, and it's also calculating a descent path based on reaching the approach at perfect speed and stuff like that, which is done by VNAV. RNAV is it's not a system. It is kind of a set of principles, a certain navigational accuracy. The way that we fly the aircraft is in RNAV. Okay, it's within. You have to have a certain RMP value within certain airspaces in order to fly certain RNAV procedures, which are built on LNAV and VNAV. So LNAV and VNAV are actually autopilot functions, while RNAV is more of a set of rules for how to actually manage and fly within using RNAV points, which are non-geographical. It's not based on any ground-based navigations. It's based on GPS coordinates and things like that. So it's a little bit hard. There's a lot of different acronyms. I'm not going to go into that now. I'm happy to maybe do a video about it. But the thing is, it's a really thin area. So I don't know how many people will be interested in listening to it for a long time, though. But thank you. So, Lizarditch. Sorry that I've already answered that. So no apprentice. Do you play the game Infinite Flight? Yes, I'm a little bit behind here. I'm not doing that. Sahal Mulan, you have sent in a super chat, but you didn't register an actual question. So whenever that happens, I'm always telling people to get the Mentour Aviation app. It's completely free. Go to the settings there. You can submit feedback. That sends me a direct email, and I will answer any super chat question that you post there. All right. So just write super chat question in the subject line, and I will answer it. So, Coleman Lee, I did check it, thank you. Ian Liesko, how difficult is it to move from the US to the airline industry in Europe? The plan is be around 43 years old with 1,000 to 1,500 hours, short or even including my ATPL 3 year. What do you think? There is a little bit of work and a little bit of money involved in changing licenses, all right? The classical way of doing it is you just contact a flight school inside of IASA and tell them that you have your licenses and you need to convert the license. They will then see how much experience you have, and then they will build up a training course. You are going to have to redo the ATPL exams in Europe in order to be able to use them. But there is, they will do a course for you basically, and that will then cost a certain amount depending on how much experience that you have. With 1,000, 1,500 hours, you already have a substantial amount of experience, so that should be doable. However, make sure before you do this that you have the right to live and work inside of the EU. Okay, you can't, just because you have the hours and because you have the license, it doesn't mean that you automatically get to work here. Just like if I would go to the United States, I couldn't apply for a job in the United States because I'm not a citizen and I don't have a green card. Okay, it's the same system here. So you have to be a citizen, or you have to have a visa, a permanent work visa, in order to apply for an airline in Europe if you want to do so. But it is perfectly doable, and that's the way to go about it. Okay, contact a training center like OSM, which are the school that I'm recommending when people ask me. They're in Sweden. That's the flight school that I used to go to. So just contact them. If you're in the Mentour Aviation app, you'll be able to just write at skavak.com with a C, Skavak, and he is one of the managers there, so he'll be able to answer any question for you. So, I and Jill, Petter, missed a lot of live chats due to timing. Do you think that the likes of EasyJet and Ryanair will take advantage of newer aircraft to go transatlantic from Northern Europe? Um, no, not necessarily. And the reason I'm saying that is because Ryanair has a very well working business model, and so does EasyJet. They're making good money, okay, in the way that they're flying. And going transatlantic, unless they can keep the same kind of model and not having to overnight cruise, well, they will have to do that if they do transatlantic flights. Um, but it doesn't have to change that much. Well, in that case, they might go for it, like Norwegian is doing, for example. But the reason that Ryanair and EasyJet hasn't gone for it is because they haven't seen any reason to step away and to expand their current business model. Now, having said that, nothing is ever static in the airline industry. Everything, I mean, what I say today might be completely false tomorrow when it comes to what airlines will and will not do. So, sure, if it turns out that they can make money, if there's a business model that allows them to fly a max from Ireland to New York, for example, and they can find some way of doing it cheaply, they will definitely do that. But I am skeptical that both those airlines that you mentioned, that they will be interested in it. I think Norwegian has a already working business model, but I think that the two others are probably are watching really closely to see whether or not Norwegian will succeed, or if they will just lose too much money on it. But great to see you, Ian. It's very nice to have you here. David R. If flying, for example, at 30,000 feet for 5 hours, and we know that the Earth is round, how do you maintain 30,000 feet throughout the flight if you were to fly straight and the Earth below you curves down? Now, right, guys, you know how I always tell you guys that you need to be good at math and physics, and that you need to pay attention at your physics lessons in school. Partially it's because of these kind of things will be explained to you already there, so that in the flight school they won't have to put any time on doing exactly that. Now, yes, the Earth is round, okay, and the aircraft is flying at 30,000 feet. What the aircraft is flying on a pressure, a specific pressure that is indicating 30,000 feet. Now, obviously, the atmosphere is surrounding the Earth. Okay, so the atmosphere will be, well, with some differences in pressure, will be slightly the same height around the globe. And what the aircraft is doing is actually following the pressure that indicates 30,000 feet. Okay, as you climb, the pressure will get lower, and the altimeter in the aircraft is feeling that pressure difference in calculating it into altitude. So you're actually following a gradient around. But the aircraft, so the Earth is not like a football. The Earth is huge, you know. So there's no need for inputs on the aircraft. We don't see the aircraft pitching down to follow the curvature of the Earth, because the Earth is ginormous. Okay, you wouldn't notice that. You possibly see it if you're looking at the gyroscope, and you look at you have a crazy sensitive gyroscope, because a gyroscope is different. A gyro will have a fixed point in space, and it will follow that. That's why they can use gyroscopes to a certain extent in space travel, because you need a gyroscope will just show straight, and if you follow a straight line with a gyroscope, that will actually leave the Earth atmosphere potentially, but a altimeter will not, and an aircraft cannot, because it's not possible to keep climbing to fly to the moon. You know, yeah, like that, I might do a video on, actually, to explain that, and to explain the concept of the coffin corner. But the answer to your question, I think what you're asking is whether or not you notice that you have to pitch down to follow the curvature of the Earth, and that's not the case. You will never notice that. You will just follow 30,000 feet until you start descending. All right. Okay, so Coleman Lee. By the way, guys, if you have questions like that, or if you feel that physics or math is something that you need to improve, make sure that you check out brilliant.org. Right? I'm really happy that they are sponsoring my channel, and I'm not just saying that because I want to sell stuff. No, I'm actually choosing people who wants to sponsor the channel, because there's quite a few that's contacting me, and there might be games and things like that I don't think that you guys would be better off having. So I say no, because I don't need that. But when it comes companies like Brilliant.org that actually has a service that helps, that I can see when I'm doing it myself, that I become smarter, that I use it, that I would have loved to have it when I actually needed it back in school. Well, then I'm really happy to let them sponsor me. It's the same with all of the sponsors that I'm using at the moment. So Cambly, check out Cambly as well if you feel that your English knowledge is not high enough. They have a great tool for that, and I'm really impressed in. Um, Skillshare, thousands of courses in pretty much anything. I'm going to use Skillshare tomorrow to try to learn a little bit more about how to do editing, video editing, because I'm terrible at it. So I'm gonna take a course in video editing and maybe thumbnail making and do some stuff there. Right. So it's great. Those, I'm really happy that they want to be in the channel. Can you explain the different ILS categories? Yeah, to a certain extent I can. Basically, the ILS, the instrument landing system, which is the precision approach system that we're using in order to get down to the runway, are divided into categories depending on how far down towards the runway you can go before you can see lights. Okay, the further down you need to descend, the more accurate the ILS system needs to be, the better backup systems there needs to be, and things like that, and the better aircraft systems there need to be. So for Cat 1 ILS, which is the normal ILS, you can get down to about 200 feet above the the threshold, okay, more or less. So 200 feet you can down. For that, you can fly completely manual. You don't need the specific ILS like autopilot, double autopilot systems, stuff like that. You can do that with the Cessna. And you just follow the ILS down, and you set the minima. If you come down to 200 feet, you don't see anything, then you execute the go around, and you can't land. All right. Cat 2 will be in our airline, and you have to do that as part of a automatic approach, an automatic approach and landing. So you need 2 autopilots, you need some backup systems in the forms of electrical power, things like that, hydraulic power, and the aircraft, so the airport needs to have been specifically built to do low visibility approaches, which is Cat 2 and Cat 3, and then you have Cat 3 Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta. I think there's loads of different Cat 3s depending on how far you can go. Cat 3, the Cat 2 can get you down to about 100 feet. And Cat 3 can get you down to 50 feet. At those altitudes, you still need to see something. Then Cat 3 Bravo, you can actually go down further than that. But if you want to see how we actually do this, and guys, I really want to push this, okay? I have made this app, the one that's constantly sending me messages now, Mentour Aviation. The app is completely free to download. All right, it doesn't cost you a penny to do so. In there, you can chat with other users, you can chat with me, you can send me messages, you can watch these playlists that I've made about documentaries and things that I think that you should know before going in. Well, even if you're just an aviation enthusiast, and the chat is there. There's loads of people there talking about aviation all the time. But in order to fund the app, I have also made paid playlists, okay? These are collections. You can see them when you open up the homepage, you see collections where I've made, like an instruction on how to completely set up the 737 from black until we're ready to taxi. I go through and I explain all of the switches that I'm doing. I explain what I do. I show it together with Holly, a colleague. And we do the whole thing, and it's filmed in 360, so you can look around, you can see all of the switches. You can use the phone by moving it around, or you can use the finger and pan it around, or you can use a 360 headset if you have one of those, and it will feel like you're sitting on the jump seat listening to me explaining it, all right? And I've done that for a number of things, like a full setup, how to do a TCAS avoidance maneuver, how to do a rejected takeoff and an evacuation, how to deal with an engine failure after takeoff and in for before the approach. And I've also done the Cat 3 approach to go around and approach to landing. So you'll be able to go in there and see exactly what we say, what buttons we push, what we do. And this is what I really want to push this app, guys, because I want as many as possible to be in there. Not because I want to make a huge amount of money. It's actually not even funding the development of the app at the moment. But I want that to become a community where you can talk to each other and to me, and I can continue building it. So if you're curious about Cat 3 approaches, go in, get that collection now, today, and you can ask me questions after the live stream, all right? So, loads of questions here. I'm a little bit behind. Charles Rayner, your broadcast mentor. I want to be a pilot too. Great. I hope that you will. All right. Best of luck to you. Keep me posted on how you're doing. James Lehman, how is income tax calculated for pilots? For example, hypothetically, if you work in a country with 50% income tax on 100,000 annual income, does that mean pilot only keep 50k? Yes. Income tax is income tax. It's the same as for any other working category. If it's 50%, but very few countries that actually has a complete 50% tax. Right? Not even Sweden or Denmark has that. But I, for example, I think I pay about around 43% tax in total, and it's even more malicious than that, right? If you live in one country and you paid in another, then the one that where you have to pay the most tax is where you pay your taxes. That's the sad truth of it. So tax is one of those things that you have to be very careful with. As an airline pilot, you have to make sure that you're doing everything right. You might work for a company that looks after you and does all of that for you. You might work for someone who says, here's your money, make sure that you do it right. Okay, airlines are different that way, but it is complex, and make sure that you're paying close attention to how your taxes are being paid, so you don't end up after 10 years with the taxman coming after you saying, listen, seems like you've missed a few thousand here for every year, so if you can please give us 150,000 euros by Friday, please, otherwise off to prison. And that's happened. Okay, so make sure that you whenever you've moved to a country, if you're paid in another country, that you pay a tax lawyer to do the taxes for you, and that everything is correctly done, so it's not fraudulent in any way. But yeah, no one likes it. Right, so Jake Schroeder. When flying and turning, it always looks like it is not the ailerons that move, but the control surface closer to the fuselage or speed brakes. How come? Yeah, it's because we're using flight spoilers to a certain extent. Okay, at higher speeds, the flight spoilers are tend to be used because of the you get slightly less torsion because the ailerons are further out on the wings. They will cause more torsion on the wings. The flight spoilers can be a little bit more efficient, so they just rise a little bit, and that drops that wing together with the rudder in the back. That helps the coordination of the turn to make sure that you feel like you're being pushed straight down in your seat and not falling left or right. So the yaw damper tends to do that, and the flight spoilers tend to be the ones that are using that are giving yaw control. And then at lower speeds, the ailerons will be used a little bit more. How that is done is it's decided by the flight control spoiler mixer that decides this depending on loads of different parameters. So normally you have a combination of both actually, but that's the reason for it. Right, so I'm going to take another question here that I got before, like I promised. Can you be a flight attendant at age 61? First of all, you who are asking that, can't remember your name, you're a very cool person, all right? The answer to that is you can absolutely try, all right? There tends to be more age restrictions on flight attendants than it is on flight crew. That's the airlines that decide that they want a specific profile, and it has been mostly younger people who have been employed. So you're going to have to check once again if there are any age limits or restrictions. But if there are none written, go for it. As far as I know, you can work until 65, so you'll have a few good years that you can fly around. It's hard work though, hard physical work. So be prepared for that, and you are going to have to pass the medical examination that flight crew and cabin crew has. So that might be something that limits some people, but I mean, 61 is no age. Today 61 is the new 41. So go for it. Try it. You're not risking anything by trying. David R is asking again, but the aircraft usually actually does go down in comparison to the Earth. And we're still talking about the following 30,000 feet. No, you're talking about something that is such a small part of flying. It's actually hard for me to explain why this is wrong in a different way that I've already done. But basically, no, you will not notice that the aircraft is pitching down in order to follow the Earth curvature. It just there's so many other factors that affects an aircraft. Even if you're flying long haul, even if you're flying across the world, it's not a noticeable movement because you're flying a surface that is very close to flat, but it's not. Okay, so like I said, if you had a really accurate gyroscope, you would yes, you would see a slight pitching down as you go along, um, because it does in effect towards a point in the sky or towards a point in universe. It will of course move as it follows a globe, but physically and in reality, no, it's not like we have to sit and constantly pitch down in order to avoid climbing. No, it's not the case. Right, Calidor. Why does TCAS only give vertical resolutions but not heading resolutions? Because it is too complex. Right. It's the only thing TCAS is there for is to avoid a collision. And the only thing you need to avoid a collision is to be away separated in either up and down or side to side. And there's no need for a simultaneous climb and turn. Obviously, the more complex resolution advisory you have, the harder it is to follow. Okay, the more chances there is for people to make mistakes. So TCAS, when it was built, it was basically, okay, you go up, I go down. What you have to realize is that there are two transponders, two physical radio items that are communicating with each other to make these decisions, and they do that live. Okay, they do that in real time, judging both where they are but also what the other aircraft is doing. So for example, if you have a climb TCAS resolution advisory, and the other one doesn't respond properly to his or her TCAS resolution advisory, it might change and say descend, descend. So you might have one resolution advisory turning into another resolution advisory depending on what the other aircraft is doing. And of course, if you would have turn, climb, turn right, 10, now, descend, turn left, like it would not work well. So they want to keep the system as simple and accurate as possible to avoid any kind of miscommunication or misunderstanding. It's very, very effective. TCAS is probably one of the best systems implemented for aircraft safety at all. Okay, so Sam Petros, hi Mentor. How can certain aircraft like the B2 fly without a vertical stabilizer? Now that's because they have found a different way of stabilizing the aircraft. You will see that it's built with a slight angle, for example, and it has its elevons, I think they're called, that compensates the lack of a vertical rudder. So it kind of still is there. It's just built into design in a different way. How to actually explain that, you'll have to go in and look in how it's actually built. I can't. I'm not an engineer, so I can't explain it better than that. All right, so Loadmaster, starting college in January for aviation education. This is a good idea if I want to go into the NTSB in the future after flying commercially. Of course, I mean we need good people in the NTSB to do crash investigations to keep the rest of us safe. So absolutely, why not? Best of luck. Let me know how it goes. Right, so every type of video, you should make new videos for the app. Yes, I know. There's been the same videos there for a while now, and I know that you guys, probably most of you who are really into the app, probably already have some of those. By the way, guys, if you want to get the total collection, as in all of the 360 instructional videos, more than 2 hours of instruction, it is on sale now until the end of this live stream for only $5. Okay, that's 2 hours of instruction from me for $5. So if you're interested in that, go in and get it now, because the normal price of that is 10. Okay, Every type of video, the answer to your question is yes, I have every intention to do that. I probably won't do any more 360 videos, because what I would like to do is I would like to do similar instruction but with even better focus on details and on the actual switches and how we do things. And I can't do that in 360. So what you can expect is probably some kind of wide angle instructional videos with insets when I do certain things so that you can clearly see it. I would love to do a whole flight from A to B, explaining exactly what we do. I would love to contract in someone who can explain the Airbus family as well, maybe the Airbus 320, maybe something like that. And I would love to have a whole array of different instructional videos inside of the app so that you guys can easily get access to it. Now those will continue to be paid, because just for me to rent the simulator or to get a cameraman to do all this work costs quite a bit of money, together with the development of the app. So, but it's going to be very, very affordable, much more affordable than any kind of similar course that you can actually find anywhere else. So yeah, thank you. I will try to do that. The problem I have right now is that I'm working full time. Tomorrow I'm going to London. I'm going to be in the simulator for 4 days. And then I'm coming home. I have 3 days. I can do a video on Friday, and then I have 2 days to spend with my family, and then I'm back flying again. So as long as I do that, I don't have time to go to England to do to do the actual work I need to do in the sim in order to get more videos done. But it will come. Okay, it will come. There's no question about that. Cool. I'll take some questions here now from the app as well. So, Mentor, my question is to tell me about stress call. Why is it used in emergency? Please explain. Stress call in emergency. We don't have a call like that. But handling stress is something that you are continuously being taught throughout CRM, the crew resource management training, how to actually deal with stress. And we have our SOPs, our standard operating procedures, to make sure that we have a good framework for how to deal with a very complex problem and not fall into the trap of becoming too stressed. So stress management is something that we have to continuously work on as airline pilots. Apprentice 181, where do I go to buy the package for the videos? You go to the home page, right? There's a home screen in the app. There's collections there. You'll see the first collection there is the complete collection, and that is the one that is on sale. So get it there. Kiag68, did you see my super chat questions? Let's see, which one is that? So I think I've covered most of them. I have to go back to that. Go to college for flight school in the US, yes or no? From Loadmaster. Sorry, I missed that one. Yeah, I mean, once again, it used to be more common to go to the US to do the training there because it was cheaper and I still think it is. But now you also have the cost of converting your licenses once you've been in the US. So you have to calculate in your calculation that, yeah, if I go, it's a little bit cheaper to do it in the US, but then I have to convert my licenses when I get back, and that can actually become even more expensive. So I can't tell you. It's going to be up to you. If you have connections there, if you can find work there, meanwhile, it might be a great idea if you can find a cheap solution that gives you quality training. And then I know there are some European schools, for example, that offer the conversion as part of the package. Then great, go for it. I'm not going to tell anyone to do or not to do that. Okay, there are some great flight schools in the United States, and it's a fantastic place to fly in. So it's probably if not only for the training, it's probably something that you will remember for the rest of your life as an experience, an unforgettable experience. So shoot, my friend. Stress call, pan or mayday. Okay, so stress call. I have never heard pan or mayday call being called stress calls before. Why they're being made? Well, that's very easy. When you call a pan call, it means that you're not in immediate danger, or aircraft or passengers on board are not in immediate danger, but that you would like priority because it's a distress call. So you have something on board that needs to be sorted. Okay, you might need help from air traffic control. They'll give you extra attention and they might give you priority. Now, mayday call means that there is direct danger to either people on board, like someone who's being seriously ill, or the aircraft in itself. And if you call Mayday, you will get all the priority. You will go wherever you want, in whatever way you want, be ahead of anyone else, and you will have people waiting for you with full blowing blue lights and any help that you might need. So it is a way to not have to negotiate with that traffic control every time. You say, okay, Mayday, Mentor 360, we have an engine fire standby. They will stand by, and when you get back again, you're going to get any help that you need, and that's the reason. So there are two levels basically. Pan is a lower level, Mayday is a higher level, but they're both distress calls. So, James saw 2. When flying manually, if you release the joke during a pitch up or down or bank, does it recenter itself? No, not necessarily. To a certain extent, an aircraft should be stable. And that means that it will kind of level itself out. If it's in a deep dive and you don't do anything, then it should eventually kind of level off itself. But it's not going to actually recenter itself, right? It's going to be doing stuff by itself while it's trying to stabilize itself. But no, so the answer to your question is no, it will not. Cool, right, so I'm getting loads of questions on the Mentour Aviation app now. See what people are saying. Let's see, I have one more question from my little paper that I haven't talked about yet. So, why no video in black box? Black box is a very old technology. Okay, it takes in loads of parameters. It's now been made into a memory card rather than these like stamp computer tapes that used to be used before. So most airlines have computer chips now, but it focuses on only central parameters. All right. So, for example, the voice input will give a lot of information. Video input, sure, would be as well, but it takes up a lot of data, and the data is more used for things like all of the different engine parameters, flight control parameters, temperatures, speeds, all of that is being fed in. So I think they had to draw the line somewhere, and the voice commands were seen as being enough. Okay, it's also being overwritten. So the only thing on the black box is with the last 2 hours of flight normally. And the reason for that obviously is that there's no point in going back 4 hours to see what happened 4 hours ago. The point is what happened basically the last couple of minutes before a crash has happened. But also if something has a little bit more context, like why did they end up in a very quick approach? Well, then maybe they want to listen back to the approach briefing and see what happened there. So 2 hours back is where you get all of the info, and then that's running, so it's overwriting itself. But video, you might not come depending on how good the memory systems are and if we can actually capture it in a good way. And this is also why you don't see the black boxes sending out data all the time, because it's crucial that all the data is being captured. And if you have a server sitting somewhere and an aircraft has to transmit, well then there only needs to be a complete power cut for that not to work. Okay, and then you wouldn't see anything and you would lose all of that information. So that's why they're actually physically in the aircraft body still and has to be retrieved, even though it's a very, very old way of doing things. So, Blizzardage, hi again. Have you ever called a Mayday except training? And if yes, why? Yes, I've called Mayday for medical. Someone who was very severely ill, and I've called Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Mentor 360, of course. We have a severely ill passenger on board. We need immediate priority and so on. So yeah, I have done that, but it's very, very rare. So Jordan calls, if the locking mechanism broke mid-flight on the 777 X foldable wings, wouldn't that be extremely dangerous? Yeah, I would say that would be very dangerous, especially if it breaks on one and not the other. When it comes to these things, it's not something that I would worry too much about, because if there is an obvious weakness, like a foldable part of a wing, you can be absolutely sure that is being tested and tested and tested, and it has to withstand the same kind of bending pressures and that a normal wing would do. So they would put that wing in, they would lock the mechanism, and then they would check it just like you've seen they do until the wing breaks. and make sure that it doesn't break in that link. So that it's being subjected to all of the certification that needs to be. So an aircraft that comes out with a foldable wing will have been completely certified to do so. The locks must be so good that it doesn't take any strength away from the rest of the wing. So I would, yeah, basically I wouldn't worry about it. If the authorities saw that this is a problem, it will not fly. It's as simple as that. So, Shalom Edward. Hi, Mentor. You may know me by my old name, Captain 777. Yeah, yeah, long time no see, my friend. Are you allowed to step into the airport to get some food during multi-sectors? How do you manage food during such days? You could, but we have very quick turnarounds. My airline, we only have 25 minutes, and we have to get the aircraft not shut down, but shut it down to transit checklist, do a setup for the next flight, do briefings for the next flight, do the checklist for the next flight, performance, and then go within those 25 minutes. So we don't have time, basically. If you have a really long stop, sure, you can go in. Or part of the crew can go in and buy something. But most of the cases, either you are catered with food for the day, so you can get access to the food. Now, I didn't talk about that in my recent video about the ding system that we're using. I hope you check that video out, because there are security protocols about what to do with the cockpit door, and I'm not allowed to talk about any of that. Okay, anything that has to do with procedures, with accessing cockpit, things like that, I just cannot even touch it, all right, because it's company specific. Everyone does it differently, and it cannot be wildly known. All right, so that's why I didn't even go into that. But of course, we can access food during long days and during flight. It's possible, but how we do that is going to remain a mystery, unfortunately. Cool, guys. That is, I think, the only last question that I said I was going to talk about was motion sickness. Now, for you who asked the question about how to avoid motion sickness when you start your flight training, I've done a video about that. If you just look for Mentor Pilots Afraid of Heights, you're going to find a video where I talk about that pilots actually can be afraid of heights. I actually am very uncomfortable with standing like on top of really tall buildings or stuff like that. I don't like it at all, and you'd be surprised to hear that there's a lot of pilots out there who are afraid of heights. That's impossible. Properly afraid of heights, because there's no connection between being afraid of heights and being afraid of flying. Those are two completely different things. That's one thing. But in that video, I'm also talking about motion sickness. I got really, really airsick the first time I flew with my dad, and there's a really quick fix to that. Okay, first of all, if you have a lot of motion sickness, it means that your equilibrium system is very well calibrated. Okay, and you're a little bit too sensitive. And that's when you get up in a smaller aircraft and it's all bumping around and you don't know where to focus your eyes. That's going to make you very sick. Okay, so the way to get through that is to actually find a technique where you can focus your eyes on something, and it tends to be either the instruments, because for example the horizon gyro is standing still. So if you can look at that, that will give you a visual impression of what the aircraft is doing. It will show you if it's turning left, right, if it's going up and down, and that can then be interpreted by your mind, and it can be kind of connected to the movements that you're feeling, and that way it will not mismatch, because it's the mismatch that makes you feel sick. Okay, it's just like when you're using a cheap VR headset. You're turning your head, and it's just a lag of a millisecond. You will all of a sudden feel like, whoa, oh, like that. And that is that mismatch between what the equilibrium system is feeling that you're doing and what you're actually seeing. Okay, so for example, a mistake that a lot of people do when they're out flying smaller aircraft is that they sit and they look straight down. All right, so you're sitting and you're looking down at all the little houses and little lakes and everything that's cool down there and how small it is. The problem with that is that you cannot, by doing that, the vision has no chance of feeling what it's doing, what the aircraft is doing. All right, you will just sit down there, and the equilibrium system will feel that you're going up and down and sideways, left to right, and stuff like that, and you will get sick. Okay, so whenever you feel that happening, you just lift your eyes, you look at the horizon, either the artificial horizon but also the outside horizon. You sit there for a while, and that way you can see exactly what the aircraft is doing, and that will make you feel better. In most cases, once you get around that, when you start understanding it, the nausea will disappear, and it's a training thing as well. You get used to it. Okay, so guys, you can stop the super chats now, because I'm gonna have to finish this. I'm getting up at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning to fly to London, so I'm gonna take the last super chat questions here, and then we're gonna have to call it today. I'm also losing my voice. So hi Petter, when you use different nav aids, and what are the priorities using them? By the way, thank you for everything. Well, thank you for being here and supporting the channel. We use the nav aids in order to be able to fly a departure or an arrival or an approach. Okay, so that means that you might have to start with one nav aid, and then you might have to switch to another, and you might have to switch between different RMIs. So basically, there's no set way of setting it up. Okay, you have to have the nav aid set up so that you can raw data, potentially fly a departure, for example. Yeah, that's unfortunately I can't, without having counter questions, I can't explain it better than that. Peter, have you done an emergency landing? No, not an emergency landing as such. I've had problems with flaps and stuff, but those are normal landings with an abnormal procedure connected to them. It's not an emergency landing. An emergency landing for me would be something where I would expect that there would be a problem landing. So flaps, too little flaps, for example, wouldn't be something I would call an emergency landing. So I've been lucky so far. So, hello sir, please tell me the difference between flying helicopter and a plane. I wish to see the review of this. And another question, why do we see aircraft flying slow in the sky? When a helicopter is flying straight forward at higher speed, it's very similar the way the helicopter flies, right? It follows the same kind of principles as an aircraft. Of course, when a helicopter slows down and stops standing still, then it's a completely different thing. Then it's doing stuff that we cannot physically do with an aircraft. And I'm not a helicopter pilot, so I can't really tell you too much about that. I can only tell you that flying a helicopter at speed and an aircraft at speed, it's similar, more similar at least. But of course, since the helicopter has basically a rotating wing, and that you change the attitude on the blades in order to kind of increase or decrease the lift taking out of them, go up and down. Those kind of things I've never tried, so I can't tell you much about it, unfortunately. The reason why you see a plane flying slow in the sky is because it's further away. It's not flying slow. It's flying very, very fast, but it is so far away that the relative speed that you see combined with everything else looks slow, but it's not. Believe me. Steven Scholte, love your videos. Have a coffee on me. Thank you, Steven. I will have a coffee on you tomorrow in Barcelona. So, how many hours a week a pilot work in airline? Is there some off time for hobbies and families, or do they work non-stop? Well, we have more off time than most other categories, all right? Most other occupations will work more hours. But when we work, we might work in a quite long shift. So, for example, I work 4 days a week. I might be flying 6 hours one day. I might be flying 10 hours one day. I might be flying 6 the next and 10 the next. So let's say that's 12 plus 20, so that's 32 hours. So, somewhere around there, 32 to 40 hours. And then I have 3 days off, which is more than what a normal 9 to 5 guy would have working in a bank or an office somewhere. And then on top of that, you'll have standby days where you are possibly being called, where the airline can call you if they need you. But in most cases, they don't. If you're at a smaller base, at least that all that time can be used being at home, mowing your lawn, fixing your internet, having a YouTube channel, or something like that. So yeah, I would say that on average, depending on what kind of airline you're working for and stuff, you probably will have more time at home. Now, if you're flying for a long airline, you might be a little bit jet lagged. There might be stuff like that, but they tend to have even more off days. So for off days, it's good, right? For off time and hobbies, it's also good. And Alex S., the last one of the super chat question. Thank you for all the videos. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to you, Alex, and I'm going to say thank you to all of you who've been watching. You've been a great audience. And I think I've covered all of the questions that I found out before. Now go into the Mentor Aviation app, check it out, download it, tell your friends at Fly School, go in there, ask questions and answer questions. There might be people in there who ask questions that you might think is stupid, but it's just stupid because you know about it. All right, so answer the question in a positive, constructive way who makes them feel like they've learned something. You will notice, which is what I'm noticing every day, that when you have the appreciation of people, it is a great feeling. It's beyond great, actually. So all of you out there, there's going to be new videos coming out on Friday. I'm still working on content, but stay tuned to the channel. And if I can, next Sunday there will be another live stream. So until then, have a fantastic day. Take care of each other, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.